Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk a little bit about our writing plan. This is kind of the next step towards our goal for our critical analysis essay, and it's going to be built upon our writing notes from Module 1 and our journal from Module 2. And you're going to notice that there's a little bit of similarity to some of the questions that you're going to be exploring in this activity as there were in our previous exercises as well. And the reason why we do this is to kind of continually encourage ourselves to think deeply about these concepts. Through repetition, we can analyze even closer. So as well as answering similar questions, we are also going to be rereading our essays too. Okay? So for our assignments, what we need to do this week is explore these sort of key critical elements here. The author's claim and the author's key points. So this would be Tan's claim, Tan's key points, McFadden's claim, McFadden's key points. Then we kind of want to shift gears a little bit, talk about your audience, your goal, and your use of evidence. And then we're going to shift a little bit more and talk about feedback and revision strategies. Okay? So to kind of complete this assignment, the first thing that I'd like you to do is reactively read that essay that you've been working with. So reread it again. Reread your annotations, reread your notes, review your writing notes, review your journal. Okay. Continue to think and think critically. Ask yourselves questions. Ask questions about your writing notes. Why did you react that way? How maybe do you react differently now? Really kind of dig in and think about your responses. Review your notes, reread that essay, and then you'll be ready to start answering these questions. And this process is going to support a potential structure for you to effectively communicate and support the claim that you're making in your critical analysis essay. And even as we're working on our writing plan, it might be beneficial for you to go ahead and review the critical analysis rubric so you kind of have that end goal in mind a little bit, okay? So what our hope for this assignment is to kind of have our claim being developed. It's our writing plan, okay? And your claim's going to have three components. A, it's going to clearly state your author's goal in that article that they wrote. 2, it's going to identify your reaction to that goal, whether or not you agree or disagree. And then 3, it's going to explain why you had that reaction excuse me, to that essay. Okay, so in my instance, because I'm working with that McFadden article, I would say clearly McFadden's goal was to communicate how she thinks the use of gender-neutral terms is silly and overused. And then I would identify my reaction to McFadden's goal. And I would say I disagree with McFadden's goal or point. And then explain why you had that reaction. I had that reaction because I find myself more entertained by her word choice than actually listening to what she's trying to say. Essentially because of her word choice, I'm distracted from her goal, and I find her more rude with her word choice than an effective communicator. So you're going to clearly indicate the author's goal, your reaction to it, and why you feel that way. Okay. Before we really get to the questions that we're going to be answering in MindEdge, I want to pay attention to this bold words here, this bold phrase. Each response should be one fully developed paragraph in length, and that's 5 to 8 sentences. We really want to try and make sure that we are crafting effective and complete paragraphs as we answer these. We're trying to get the basis for a formal essay. This doesn't have to be wholly formal yet, of course, but it's a work in progress, so we really want to do our best now so that we're better supported with our next assignment. So really strive to make 5 to 8 sentences. Now, if you're unsure on how to flesh out a paragraph that you maybe would write as we're just making our notes, 2 sentences. If you're not quite sure how to push it from 2 to 5 sentences, I do have some references listed in this midweek announcement. Additionally, I'll be happy to brainstorm and talk you through the process of expanding your thoughts to fit that goal for our paragraphs. You can text, you can email me, we can chat, or you can also post it on the general discussions forum, and maybe as a class we can kind of talk through that process too. But there is support here for you as you're working on those 5 to 8 sentences per question for each paragraph. And remember that we do have the online SNHU Writing Center as well, and they're full of awesome people happy to support you with just this thing too. All right, let's hit those questions. A, let's reread that selected article, take a look at your notes, take more notes, ask more questions, and really kind of dig in deep with your critical thinking. And what we want to explore with this first question is, has the author's goal changed now that you've reread it, thought about it more, and kind of had this analytical and active approach to reading and engaging with it? So has the author's goal changed? If so, how? If not, why not? Why hasn't it changed? And we do have a couple new links here if you need to reconnect with that essay. And then remember, you want to hit submit. 2, have you identified any new key points that the author uses to try achieve his or her goal in your selected article? So we're talking about that author here. We're talking about Tian or McFadden or the other guy. Has their goal changed? And have you identified any new key points? With the McFadden article, after I got past my initial gut reaction and I reread that article, did I find any new key points that McFadden uses to support her claim? Not my claim, not my interpretation of her claim, but her actual claim that gender-neutral terms are silly and overused. Have I gained new insight? Have those key points changed? Have there been any more? If so, include them here. If not, explain why the key points from your writing notes are still effective. Okay. Number 3, consider your audience. Now, I am a member of your audience, as are your peers, but we're not the only people in that auditorium waiting to hear you speak, right? So who else would be interested in hearing your essay, hearing what you have to say? Let's think outside of this little box in our classroom, okay? Who else would be interested in reading your essay? For instance, in the McFadden essay, it would be you guys and my team lead, but maybe it could also be somebody who's interested in the subjectivity of English. Maybe it's an English professor outside of this class. Maybe it's a general academic. Maybe it's going to be somebody in the LGBT community who's interested in how other people interpret gender-neutral terms. So who else is interested or potentially interested in reading what you're talking about? Okay, and then we also want to be sure we talk about the potential challenges of supporting our argument with that demographic. So state who your audience is beyond me, and how, what challenges will you have in reaching them? Okay, and let's get our 5 to 8 sentences for that paragraph, and make sure that you're submitting in Mindedge. Number 4 is our goal. Your goal is the end result that you wish to achieve in writing the critical analysis essay. What's your point? What's your purpose? Tell us what it is. For instance, I disagree with McFadden, but it's largely because of the way she uses her language. So my goal is to tell you guys that while she has a point that I don't necessarily agree with, she loses all effectiveness because she chooses to use facetious and insulting language. In other words, my goal is to tell you that yes, she has a point, but it's lost because she's too busy using rude language. Okay, and that's my goal. It doesn't have to be the same goal that you have. Maybe you interpret this essay completely different, and if you do, awesome. That's the cool thing about writing. We can all look at the same piece and have a different reaction. So number 4 is your goal that you wish to achieve in writing this critical analysis essay. Okay. Number 5, evidence is what we use to support that goal. So what we need to do with number 5 is dig into that essay and find examples that support what we're trying to say. Now, in my example, my goal is to say she's got a point. I don't necessarily agree with it. It's lost anyways because she uses this strong, colorful language. So I need to go into that essay and find examples of strong, colorful language that might hide her true point because she's too busy being flashy with her words to get a gut reaction. Her actual point's kind of lost under my perceived rudeness of her language. So go into your essays and find quotes or little bits of information that support your goal, okay? And then we need to defend it. Okay, you can't just list quote after quote here. We need to have an actual conversation about it. So I would say, for instance, McFadden's use of language is sometimes too colorful for her audience to understand her point. For example, when she says, blank, put it in quotations, I'm too focused, or her audience is too focused on the image of a sea of gnats, than really understanding the validity of her point. Okay, so find the evidence, tell us what the evidence is, and then tell us why it supports what you're trying to say. Okay. Number 6, you're going to be getting feedback on this writing plan. You've been getting feedback on your assignments throughout the term. Feedback is really helpful because it helps our paper excuse me, be the best that it can possibly be. Okay, that constructive criticism can be applied to what we're writing to make it super awesome. So how can your own writing improve from receiving feedback from an outside party? And how can you integrate that feedback into the final project? Essentially, what feedback is effective for you and how do you use it? Okay, remember, we're pushing for 5 to 8 sentences for our paragraphs, and make sure you're hitting that submit button after you do type them in. And then number 7, we're going to be starting thinking about the revision process. That's not until Module 7, but we're going to be talking about some revision processes to help us make this paper go from a plan to a draft to an awesome paper that we're super proud of. What revision processes do you have experience with, and what do you find effective? Okay, and why do you think that strategy would be effective? So, for instance, maybe you've had experience with peer evaluations and you think that that would be a very beneficial revision strategy. Why would it work for you? Or maybe you've read your paper out loud before, and read it out loud and heard the flow and caught some errors that way. Why is that effective for you? Essentially, what we want to do here is take a look at revision processes that we've been exposed to, and consider what might work for us with this with this essay. Okay, and then write a nice strong paragraph, hit submit. And then remember that this is one of those assignments where you do need to enter in all your fields in MindEdge, hit submit, and then be sure that you do download it into a Word document. And I want you to open up that Word document and put your name on it, put a title on it. Let's try and format it into an MLA standard paper, which we do have resources in our module and in our announcement to support this. And I'm always happy to take a look at your paper to make sure it's formatted correctly before you submit it, as long as you give me time to. Make sure it's double spaced, make sure it's size 12 fonts, make sure you indent all of your paragraphs, that good stuff. And also, let's pay attention to our flow. You don't need to have these paragraphs in any particular order yet, but maybe start looking and see how they work together and rearrange it so it flows like an essay. Okay, you can even try your hand at an introduction or conclusion if you'd like, but that's not wholly required. Okay, so submit all of your work in MindEdge, download it into a Word document, clean it up, and then upload it into Blackboard. And before I let you go real quick, we want to take a look at our rubric so we can make sure that we're hitting all of those critical elements. Remember that we are talking about the author's claim. That would be the author of the essay. Determine that claim that's going to be addressed from one of your essays that you're using. So that would be where McFadden's claim, Tien's claim is this. What key points? Talk about those key points that author used. And then we kind of switch gears to our audience. Who is your audience outside of me, and what challenges do you have in connecting with them? And then we want to make sure that we establish our goal in the essay. What is our goal in that critical analysis essay? Make sure that we determine potential places, some specific direct quotations, some paraphrase content that's going to support that goal, and then defend that. Why do you think that quote would be particularly good in supporting your goal? And then let's touch base on our revision strategy that you think would be effective, and talk about why it would be effective. And then let's explore feedback. What feedback strategy do you think would be effective in supporting your success? And then finally, we want to take a look at the articulation. And what articulation refers to is making sure that your grammar, your spelling, your syntax, and your organization is good. That's just making sure the mechanics are working well. And you also notice that it says something about citations under the articulation part of our rubric. And you can try your hand at an MLA citation. We haven't yet determined if we're going to be using MLA or APA. So if you want to try, go ahead and try. Either one, and then we can talk about how you're succeeding, or maybe where we want some improvements. But we really kind of want to focus on grammar and spelling and organization and make sure that that paper is starting to, at least that our paragraphs are starting to sound really good. And if you aren't sure about your grammar or your spelling or your organization or your syntax, you can always send your paper to me. I'd be happy to give it a once over. And you can also contact the SNHU Online Writing Center for support as well. All right, you guys got this. It's going to be awesome. Good luck. You don't need luck. It's going to be great.